Welcome, and thank you for inviting me to talk about bio-waste management in Europe. My presentation is based on a report that we have published in 2020. And with involvement of our countries, of all of our member countries, including Turkey. Next one, please. Can you please move to the next slide?
Sunum kontrolü buradan mı yapılıyor acaba? Oradan, tamam.
I can see that you show the English version. It's fine for me, but I thought you would show the Turkish version.
Turkish version is... Oh, no, it's not.
Well, I can start already talking a bit about bio-waste while the slides are sorted out. Bio-waste is one of the big waste streams when talking about waste coming from households and similar sources. And we understand as bio-waste biodegradable garden waste and waste from parks, and food and kitchen waste produced both in households, but also in offices, in restaurants, in supermarkets, canteens, caterers, and so on. But the bio-waste I'm addressing here is not the waste that is generated in food industry or in agriculture. The European Waste Framework Directive has a number of requirements on bio-waste, new requirements that were introduced in 2018. And the main requirement is that from 2023 onwards, all EU member states will have to collect bio-waste separately, or to make sure that it is recycled at source, meaning composted at home, or maybe fed used as animal feed by private households. But then there's also the requirement to start monitoring food waste. When the first data will have to be reported by mid this year, so we will only see those data later in this year. But then there is also the targets for municipal waste recycling according to the EU Waste Framework Directive, and there's a target to recycle 55% of all generated municipal waste by 2025, and that grows to 65% by 2030. And because bio-waste is a really big part within municipal waste, these targets cannot be reached without proper bio-waste management and composting or digesting it. Next one, please. We have looked into data for bio-waste and using data on the composition of municipal waste. And what we found as an average for all the EU countries was that around 1/3 of all municipal waste in the EU is actually a type of bio-waste. And much of this is food waste, and followed by garden waste. And about more than half of this bio-waste is currently still mixed into the residual municipal waste, meaning that it goes either to landfill or to incineration. Next one, please. That's the EU average, and it differs a lot between countries. We have asked all our member countries to provide us information about the share of bio-waste within the municipal waste, and we have calculated based on that how much bio-waste per capita is actually produced in each country. And there is a large range between countries with a rather low shares, for example, in Estonia and Latvia, and rather high shares, for example, in Turkey, but also in Romania, Czechia, Spain, Denmark. As countries produce very varying amounts of municipal waste in total, those countries which have a high overall production of municipal waste and a high share in the bio-waste, of course, they produce in total really high amounts, for example, Denmark. But I also have to say that the data about the composition of municipal waste are not very certain, because there is not one agreed methodology on how to measure the composition of municipal waste. So there's some uncertainty here in those data. But on average, in the EU, about 47% about that is actually bio-waste within the municipal waste, which means that it's more than 150 kilogram per inhabitant of the EU bio-waste generated. Next one, please. If we look at the situation of how much of that bio-waste actually is separately collected, and we look at how that differs between countries, then again we have very high differences. There's a few countries who have started collecting bio-waste separately several years ago, like for example Austria, Belgium, Germany. But also Slovenia, who hasn't done that for a very long time, but has actually achieved quite high capture rates. And then there is other countries which have not really embarked yet broadly on collecting bio-waste separately. So some countries managed to capture more than 80% of all the generated bio-waste separately for composting or digestions, while in a lot of other countries, for example, Cyprus, but also still Turkey, Spain, Portugal, most of the bio-waste still goes into the mixed municipal waste. However, these data are from, the information we had is from about 2018, 2019, and we know that many of the countries are currently building up bio-waste separate collection capacities, are introducing separate collection in anticipation of the EU requirement that kicks in 2023. So the picture is currently changing quite quickly. Next one, please. If we look into what is happening with the bio-waste in the different countries, then there is countries which are mainly composting the bio-waste, for example, Greece or Hungary or Romania, and there is other countries which have the strategically more developed towards anaerobic digestion, especially for food waste. And again, there is quite big differences in the strategy between countries, but what we also know from capacity planning is that there is a general trend towards rather moving into anaerobic digestion, because with the digestion it's possible to generate energy in terms of in the form of biogas. Next one, please. Yeah, of course, once you have collected the bio-waste, it's really important that there is also the the produced compost or digestate is of good quality, so that it has a market in agriculture or in other applications. And we have asked the countries which ones actually have national standards for compost quality, which is one of the key instruments to make sure that the quality of the compost is good enough and good for use on land. And our finding was that there is like about not yet half of the countries who have either a mature system which is already embedded in the national legislation, or they are working on national legislation to do that. There is a number of countries who are still planning to do that, but haven't done it yet. One step further from national standards for compost quality is to introduce actually a quality management system which guarantees the high quality of the compost and gives a certification, so that there can be built trust in the market for farmers and for horticulture sector to trust into the quality of the compost, and that means that if a quality management system is in place, which gives a certificate for guaranteed quality, that then the market also gets more mature, and the trust in the quality increases, which means that it can also open up for possible applications of the compost or the digestate outside of the agricultural sector. But this is also an area which is developing. Next one, please. We can see also we didn't have information for all of the countries, but on the average of those countries where we have information, we know that around half of the compost actually goes into agriculture and horticulture, and then a lower share goes into landscaping and green areas and into growing media. And that differs quite a lot between the countries. In some countries, this market of outside the agriculture is quite well developed, for example, in Flanders and Belgium, while, for example, in Switzerland or also France, Ireland, Italy, Netherlands, most of the compost actually goes into agriculture and horticulture. Very recently, maybe a little anecdote is that I joined a webinar where a person from Lithuania explained experiences with bio-waste compost, and they explained that due to the very high fertilizer prices, they can actually sell much better now the compost they produce from separately collected bio-waste, and they can sell it to farmers for about 20 euro per ton. Due to the increasing fertilizer prices. Next one, please. Yeah, this is an example of a quality management system. Quality management system is a system where you have rules for what is allowed as input material, like a positive list, what's allowed as input material, then a checklist for the quality of the whole operation of the composting plant, then of course the control of the product quality in the end, and also recommendations on the application of the compost or digestives. And for one example of such a system is a certification system by the European Compost Network, which is open also for non-European partners, as far as I know. Next one, please. So if we look into the overall picture, how the composting and digestion share in the municipal waste is actually developing in the EU. We can see that over the past 5-6 years, it has been increasing, although it has been increasing very slowly. The composting and digestion share is the green part of this figure here. So it is increasing, but still slowly, but we expect that this will increase a bit quicker now with the requirement of the Waste Framework Directive to introduce separate collection for bio-waste. Next one, please. Yeah, but maybe we can look a bit more into future, because bio-waste actually can also be turned into new products. Currently, if all the bio-waste that is currently collected with the mixed municipal waste and it is not composted or digested, if that could be collected separately and turned into compost, then it would deliver around 134,000 tons of nitrogen fertilizer and 44,000 tons of phosphate fertilizer. And in the times of shortage of fertilizers, this is indeed contributions we should keep in mind and work towards making use of. But there is also possibly some other opportunities for higher value products from bio-waste. It could be developed into, for example, a source of animal feed or insect protein. It could be used to generate bioethanol or biohydrogen. All these technologies are not fully mature and developed yet, but we see this as an opportunity that should be worked upon. Because this bio-waste is a resource that we have at our hands, and that anyway needs to be handled properly. So there's ongoing research on this, and we would expect that this is developing over time into some more higher value products from bio-waste. That was it from my side. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Almut. Very interesting presentation. I'm opening the floor for questions, if any. Romano, please.
Thank you. My question is, you said that we have some member states that have an approach more related to composting rather than anaerobic digestion, and other more focused on anaerobic digestion. I also see, according to my experience in Sardinia, that many installations are switching from aerobic to anaerobic digestion. There are, of course, pros and cons. According to your experience, which are the criteria that you should evaluate to make a choice between the two technologies?
I think it's, of course, the anaerobic digestion is more suitable for food waste, for example, than for garden waste. So I think that's definitely one of the criteria to take into account. Is the waste more, is it more food waste, or is it more like the high carbon garden waste type of thing? And also the anaerobic digestion is often our installations where both agricultural waste, agricultural type of bio-waste, for example, manure is co-digested with food waste, for example. So I think it's very much infrastructure questions and the situation of what kind of waste is available. But otherwise, I think I'm maybe not the right person to answer this, as we don't really have a lot of experience with this. But yeah.
Maybe a quick question. Hello, Almut. This is Piotr. One question on what kind of separate collection of bio-waste would you recommend? Or maybe based on the analysis, whether is it door-to-door or bring banks or some other way of collecting, or using the which kind of bags to use, or maybe no bag, or biodegradable bag, or paper. There are different ways different municipalities do, and which one is according to you the best to recommend here for us to analyze? Thank you.
No, that's a very good question. I think the experiences from many countries show that the door-to-door collection usually delivers the best results, both in terms of quality and in terms of capture rates, especially for food waste. For garden waste, of course, it can be a bit different. And we know that many countries have for garden waste also bring systems. But for food waste, as far as I know, there is I don't know of any country who's really doing serious separate collection of food waste, which is not door-to-door. And in terms of the bags to use, well, there is different opinions. We know that there is, for example, Italy is promoting heavily the use of biodegradable plastic bags for that purpose, while many municipalities in Germany, they absolutely don't want this kind of bags in their for the bio-waste collection. But what we found out is that one of the key questions is the setup, the technical setup of the composting or digestion plants, because for example, the Italian composting plants, they use longer composting times, and in those longer composting times, it seems to be feasible to degrade the biodegradable plastic bags, while in Germany the technology uses shorter composting times, and then these plastic bags don't degrade properly. So I think the main message is that when setting up a separate collection system, you have to see it as an integrated system of, like, the type of collection has to fit with the technology used in the composting plants. And on top of that, very, very important is the good communication towards the citizens on what should be put into those bags, and what should be collected separately and what should be kept out of it. This is, of course, it generates some costs, but without that, the quality might be so poor that it can't be used in the end. Yeah.
Thank you very much. In case there are no further questions, I suggest to move on and skip the coffee break. You can take a coffee or tea or cookies from the lobby, if you agree, of course. Gonzalo is with us. Almut, thank you very much, and much appreciated. Thank you very much for joining the training, and we are looking forward to seeing you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.